welcome to our session on partnerships. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Charlie Ardagh, Head of Partnerships at Tynes. So Charlie, tell me a bit more about yourself and especially what drew you to working at Tynes.
Hi everybody. So I head up the partnerships team. Tynes is an Irish company. I'm a local boy here. So it's unusual that the sort of planets align, that you get a couple of great founders with amazing product market fit, who've built a really strong team and attracted world-class investors on your doorstep here in Dublin. So having spent a few years in a large multinational environment, I was keen to get back to startups where I'd spent a good chunk of my career before that.
Brilliant. And Tynes has had some great success. What do you think has played a role in that?
I think the founders had a really strong, clear understanding of the pain point that they were building the product to solve for. So our founders spent 15 years leading security teams for companies like eBay and DocuSign. And they had seen the really fairly mundane, monotonous work that a lot of people on their team had to do day in, day out, despite these people being people of immense ability. And so they looked around for a product that could really automate a lot of that mundane work and didn't find anything, so went on and built it themselves. And so they sort of had a really clear understanding of the customer's pain point, really obsessed over that in the early years. And they were able to get a few design partners, I would call them, I suppose, as early customers, and really fine-tune and hone the value proposition. And then in the last sort of 18 to 24 months, they were able to bring in some people who'd done the go-to-market piece and knew what world-class looked like for that, and that's what we're trying to build. But I think understanding the customer was the key to the initial traction.
And you mentioned their go-to-market. I think that's critical for all startups, but what role has partnerships played in that for Tynes?
Yeah, I think so. Pretty early on, the company realized that Tynes was a great fit with a lot of complementary technology. So the nature of the product is it can automate anything with an API. Yep. And so that makes it super friendly with a lot of the rest of the IT and security stack. So it meant that if we could work with more established players who had customer bases, who had a product that could be made better with Tynes, that would be a really efficient route to market for us. And they identified that and then really made a bet pretty early, I think, in terms of the maturation of the go-to-market play to bring in a person, which is myself, to try and really invest in that. And in the last kind of 18 months, I've been able to build a bit of a team around that. We've started to look at not just one partnerships type, but we work with technology alliances, so those kind of companies that sell a core product that Tynes make better, so companies like Elastic and Lacework. We've also looked at working with global consulting companies because they tend to be in amongst and in the middle of these big security products at large enterprise accounts. That's a slow burner for anybody thinking of working with those companies. It's a very long-range plan, but we've decided to make a commitment to that on the basis that it should bear fruit down the road. And we also work with value-added resellers, so people who have been the sort of trusted voice in the room for customers when they're buying their IT, and in particular their security IT. But at the core of all of those three different kinds of partnerships, and given the shift to cloud, we assessed where does our ideal customer profile operate in terms of the three main cloud options, and AWS is a clear fit for us. And so really, AWS is at the core of all of those three partner types, and we tend to meet in AWS on the marketplace. Even if we're selling through a VAR, we're selling through AWS. If we're working with a partner, we're meeting in the channel at AWS. And that has been a real just strong glue to bring all of that partnership strategy together. And that's where we're at today.
And what would you say differentiates a partner? So what makes a good partnership for a startup?
Well, if you're a small startup, a partner that has lots of customers who's willing to introduce you to those customers is obviously critical. I think leadership buy-in from the partner to actually want to do business with you. You hear and like we've all done it in startups where it looks like this big company here could just open up so much opportunity for us, but they just don't want to pay attention to you, and you're just never going to be able to like bring enough value to the table. So that leadership buy-in, and also just that they have the systems and the infrastructure to engage with a smaller company, and that's true for actually even Accenture has a big open innovation group that works with small companies. The VARs are obviously open to new vendors with leading edge technology, but AWS has probably the most mature program for partners to engage in, for ISVs as AWS would call them, to engage in. And if you can kind of work your way through the tiers and just play by the rules and hit the milestones, you start seeing reciprocity from AWS, and the systems and the machine sort of kicks in. Don't tell Facebook, but the month before I joined, I actually started the process of getting Tines listed on the marketplace. There's a third party that does that called Tackle.io, if anyone's interested. You kind of outsource it all to them for a reasonable fee. So I knew AWS was going to be an important bet for us, and within a few months we'd started getting some initial traction just by focusing on it and knowing that our customers were already buying through the AWS marketplace, because they have these things called EDPs. They're like long-term commitments to buy AWS capacity, and they can spend that commitment on ISV products. And if they don't spend that committed money, their discount diminishes. So they might get to a milestone in that EDP plan, and if they haven't spent it, it'll work against them. So we're sort of a bite size that we've even seen customers buy Tines way faster in order to use up and burn down that commit. And so for those reasons, we made a lot of progress fast. We hired a person dedicated to AWS, and now we're just working our way through the program, really, and graduating through it and getting more and more support from the team there.
Which leads me on to my next question. So we've been very lucky to work with you over the last 12, 18 months. But what impact has partnering with AWS had, would you say, on Tines and how you've scaled?
Yeah, so probably the biggest thing we see in the numbers is because of these EDPs, you don't have to get set up as like a vendor with a customer, because they're already buying their software through the AWS marketplace. It means that the procurement end of the deal cycle is dramatically reduced, and that can often be the more complex end of things. Despite all of your technology buyers buy-in, when it gets to procurement, it can get tricky. So transacting through the marketplace has sped things up. So deals move faster because they have this EDP budget sort of pre-allocated to anything from the AWS marketplace. Deals can be a little bigger in terms of the early data, at least, that we're seeing. And what we're hoping, we're only seeing some signals of it, is that as we bring business into AWS, then AWS reps, whom, as you know, get compensated if a customer buys Tines, will start bringing us business, and we'll start to reciprocate in that way.
And have you seen that AWS do this particularly differently to other vendors, or has that been something you've experienced?
I think AWS has a really strong focus on what's emerging versus like a lot of other partners, even if it's in the tech alliances, tend to, that you need to be a certain scale and substance in order to get engagement with them, and like we don't. We're an early stage startup. We're starting to get the scale and traction, but like relative to who companies could be partnering with, we're super early. So that's been the real difference that AWS is sort of set up to deal with and engage with emerging companies, which I think has been a real. We've benefited a lot from that.
And have there been any challenges in kind of building partnerships? Have you got any lessons learned in terms of any other scaling organization or startup can take from your experience building partnerships?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, outside of AWS even as well, I think like what's worked for us is getting the leadership buy-in, getting people who are willing to work with small companies, but also finding a better together story. So finding maybe there's a product gap in the partner company that your product can fill or address. Trying to find if maybe we unlock more utilization of the partner company's product, or if we can drive more stickiness of their product. Because we're, as a startup, we're not in a position to share a ton of revenue with a complementary technology provider, and that's probably not why they're doing a partnership. It's more about, increasing the size of their ARR or reducing churn risk, and just like driving adoption of their product. If you can find that combination, we found that that has been what really has been the most compelling story for them to tell internally and to get airtime with their sales people, who have probably many things to be talking to their customers about, and Tines is probably way down the list. But if we can position Tines as something that solves a problem, unlocks potential, reduces churn risk, then you can get mind share of their sales people, and that's really what you want, is this extended army of evangelists for Tines into this existing customer base.
And as you kind of continue to grow, what does the future look like for Tines, and the role of how partners can help you get there?
I think there's a number of fronts, right? So whether it's geographic expansion, so we have just started we've hired 4 people now in APAC, a really complex part of the world with it's really 4 or 5 regions in one. It looks like partners is probably the best way to get going there. So it'll definitely help with geographic expansion in that part of the world. I see this shift to cloud and buying in marketplaces. And frankly, Azure and GCP have marketplaces as well. And they're also seeing significant growth in the way customers, businesses are buying big ticket software. I think that shift, for us, it happens to be AWS where the best sort of fit is for our customers. But that's where I think there's a really big shift that is going to just keep growing pretty exponentially, the way software is bought. And for that reason, we're likely, as I think about my team and my organization, if you like, as Tines grows, will be disproportionately bigger than it would have been, say, 10 years ago before these marketplaces exist, because you have to map to the sales teams of these hyperscaler cloud platforms in order to take advantage of that mega trend of procurement via marketplaces.
Makes sense. And in terms of, I guess, anything you want the audience to know about Tines, just as we wrap up, or any questions, what would you say?
I mean, the product is free. It's Tines.com. You can try it out. It's fully featured product. I think, from a partnerships point of view, the other lesson I would learn, I think the biggest takeaway, whether it's with clouds or with VARs or with tech alliances, is it's quite a long-term commitment.
Yeah.
So that understanding that this isn't like adding an AE that if you can get them ramped in 6 months, they will start becoming productive from a revenue generation. It doesn't. Partnerships take longer than that. They take 18 to 24 months as the time horizon that as leadership teams of startups need to think about. If you're going to engage with partners, it isn't like a tap, and it's a long-term investment. And the other part of it is not to think about a partner bringing you deals, automatically it going straight to hey, can you introduce me? I saw you've got such and such as a customer. Can you can you make an intro? Yep. Focus on how you can just work together and help, and how they can influence deals. And those sort of intros are a lagging indicator for success. It's really help, collaboration, doing joint events. It's hard to fill a room at the periphery of a conference like this in a bar, say across the road, for a happy hour on your own as a startup. But if you team up with a few others, you can work together that way. So long range, don't focus on just closing business overnight, and just like collaboration, and the magic will happen down the way.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us, and appreciate your time, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you very much.